What's up, fellas? So guess what? It's July in Florida and it's hot. What we're doing is wrapping up the last couple steps on the Explorer heads that are going on the F-150 Nite. It's been slow going. You know, it's just takes time. And I probably get too in the weeds about trying to make everything just so. So I've tried to turn it off a little bit. Get these done. I'm not trying to make, you know, a bunch of power with these. I just want an improvement over stock. Obviously it's going to be, if I just put the regular unported Explorer heads on there, it would have been an upgrade from stock, but I still can't leave well enough alone. So we'll get you turned around here to see what I'm doing. All right, so these are the springs. These are the 8017 AFR takeoffs I got for a guy in Corral for like $100 bucks. They're brand new, never been run. One thing I learned is because they're at like 370 pounds, you know, fully compressed, because it is kind of a comparatively weak spring, the coil bind is only 1.05 inches. So you got to use shims. I mean, typically you're going to use shims, but I had another set of hardware for the twisted wedge heads that are going on the LTD. So instead of having to use a whole bunch of shims, I found out that the retainers on there are like 50 thousandths lower than these that came with the kit I got from FTI. I got both kits from FTI, but typically what some guys do when they install springs, they set it for like a certain installed height to have a certain seat pressure when it's installed. So I've always read there's like two schools of thought: to have for a certain seat pressure or to have it a certain distance from coil bind. So the one that you set it from coil bind plus your lift, and then you have a little, what they call a safety factor, that will determine your installed height. So that way it makes sense to me. So that's what I try to do. So I made this little chart here. So this is the lift on the intake, 0.570. Coil bind is 1.05. And the safety factor is 0.100. You can go tighter, but that's a good rule of thumb to me. And that gives you a 1.67 installed height. So the way these were, I had to use a 60,000 shim underneath the intake, and then the exhaust, same thing, 550 lift, 105, 100, 1.7 installed height. But for that one, I needed a 30,000 shim and a 15 thousandths. Trying to talk a little louder because I got three fans going. I got that one there, and this one blowing on my swamp butt. So I'll try to talk louder. All right, so that's that, and I've got this one nearly done, and I just left these two off. That's roughly where it's going to be at max lift on each valve. So it's 570 on the intake and then 550 on the exhaust. And the reason I said I'm nearly done, I just got a couple steps left, is because on here I forgot to do the last step on the valve guide, the shim, or the machine where that is. This is what a stock valve guide looks like. A little crusty. I got these from Pirate. I think he had them on the boat with him. But this is the cutter I use, if that will focus. It's a 4733 cutter, and that will cut it down to look like this one, where you got a 570 base. This says for a 1.44 spring, 560 base. Sorry, 560. So that'll go like so, and that'll cut the big thing down from that. And it's a slow process because it kind of trues up your valve guide, your outer guide here, and then it cuts down to the bottom. And then this cutter, the 4715, that cuts the guide down a little more, and then it flattens it out at the bottom. So you can use a 500 seal, and that is where these come in. The Comp 517/16. That's a really small seal. If I get one out of here. Hands are all sticky because it's sweaty. But that goes on like so, and it's got a small inner diameter, so which is good for a small spring. You got a small, like a 1.3 or 1.2 spring, that'll still work. You just need a let me get one of my things here. This is the seat. So when this goes on, this kind of centers on the on your valve, your seal. Otherwise, with that 560 down on the bottom, that'll center on that. But it ain't gonna. These won't fit on. Will fit on there, but you got to take. You got to hammer it on. I've been using a socket, a 6-point, half-inch socket. Put it on there, just give it a couple of taps, and it's on. It doesn't have any rubber on the inside, like on the wall. So if it's a little loose, you can put a little Loctite on there. Put some, just something to make sure it stays tight. On the exhaust, it's not super critical to have a tight seal, but you really want to have it on the intake, otherwise it'll suck oil in. And as for the porting, the exhaust is just, I didn't like make it a whole lot bigger. There we go. That light's probably killing it, but just smoothed it out, cut down the floor a little bit, and then made sure it had a nice continuous radius around the outside or the bottom of the floor. You can see in there, lots of carbon. And I just made the exhaust ports just a little bit wider compared to what stock is. Didn't mess with the roof. Didn't mess with the, just sides a little bit. Cut down the, like I said, cut down the floor. Got rid of all the ridges and bumps and whatnot, castings. Just make it more efficient. And on the intake, let's see if I can get this up here without dropping it on my toe. I just kind of narrowed the valve guide a little bit, widened the floor here, and that's about it. Just like I said, making it more efficient so it works a little better. Didn't make it like, a lot bigger or anything like that. Trying to move one hand in one direction, the other hand in another, giving me fits while looking through the camera. So that's, like I said, that's essentially it. I just had to do that last step on the machining, so I figured I'd show you what the difference is between the two before I get that last step done. So much better, I think, having that small seal on there and a shorter stack. It does give more room too on the inside for your lift. Won't be a factor on this one, but the like the LTD cam, it's a little over 600 lift, I think, on the intake. This is only 570, so it's not a huge cam, but I mean, it is got a lot of lift for a short duration. I think the intake duration is like 204. Exhaust is 214 roughly, but it's got a lot of lift, and I got 1.65 rockers on the intake to help it out a little bit. Anyway, we'll get this wrapped up and put her up on the YouTubes. Appreciate y'all. Later. Hey fellas, I figured I would add on a little bit here because to clarify, I guess, or maybe to help it make sense. So like I said, The two schools of thought on setting up the springs are either set it up by installed height or set it up by coil bind, which is what I did. With the installed height, especially on the small block Fords, you know, you got a different, your exhaust valve is usually a little different than your intake. So even the base measurement with no shims or anything, there was a difference. So the installed height, it's going to be, you're going to have different seat pressures if you're just going by installed height, because of the way the the groove is on the exhaust valve. Like I said, it's just a little bit different than what it is on the intake. But like I said, it made sense to me to go by coil bind, because that's going to be the same for both. So if you go off coil bind, your installed height's going to be different between the intake and exhaust. But the coil bind is like the base measurement you go from. So that's why it made sense to me. And that's why I've been doing it this way. Ed always recommend, I mean, I'm not flicking boogers at Ed. He got way more experience in this than I do. But that's what he recommended. So not going to saying I go against Ed. It's my stuff. I'm going to do what I want with it. And that's what made sense to me. So that's why that's that way. Anyway, wanted to clarify. Maybe it'll make sense to y'all too. All right. Appreciate you. Later.